Karoline Leavitt had convinced herself she could humiliate Jasmine Crockett on national television and walk away untouched. What she didn't foresee was the aftermath. A lawsuit backed by undeniable evidence, and a woman who wielded calm like a blade, cutting precisely without ever raising her voice. It all unfolded on an ordinary Wednesday. Emails were flying out, legal drafts exchanged, court prep quietly progressing. In downtown Dallas, the hum of city traffic filtered faintly through the tall windows of Attorney Brandon Keyes' office. Inside, Jasmine Crockett sat composed, her eyes scanning the final pages of deposition notes, her pen occasionally tapping against the edge of the binder. Then, the door opened. Her chief of staff, Samira, stepped in, her posture caught somewhere between casual and cautious. She held her phone out, its screen glowing faintly in her hand. "I think you should see this," she said softly. Jasmine set her pen down, took the phone, and looked at the screen. It wasn't a legal update, nor a press statement. It was something far more personal. A screenshot, forwarded from a verified source. It was Karoline Leavitt. She had written directly to Jasmine, no attorney, no aide, no PR buffer. Just her own words. "I know this message may not reach you, but I have to try. I'm sorry I went too far. I thought I was being bold, but now I see I was reckless. This has cost me more than I ever imagined. Please stop the lawsuit." 88 words. Not long, not theatrical, but it struck harder than any of Karoline's televised jabs in months. Brandon leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he read the text over Jasmine's shoulder. "She's shifting the frame," he said flatly. "That's not remorse, that's positioning. A strategy, not sincerity." Jasmine didn't argue. She simply handed the phone back to Samira and said evenly, "Don't leak it. If someone else wants to, let them." But restraint doesn't always control the tide. 2 hours later, the message was all over Twitter. An anonymous political journalist had posted the screenshot, and the digital wildfire spread instantly. Podcasts, talk shows, late-night monologues, all of them pounced in less than a day. Those 88 words had consumed every platform. Some commentators called it a human moment. "She's breaking." One tweet read. Another pleaded, "Let her go." But others fired back. "You can't publicly humiliate someone and then beg privately." The networks joined in. CNN aired a feature titled "The Power of Public Silence." MSNBC assembled a roundtable of former officials dissecting the ethics of apology. Fox News called the leak an invasion of privacy, but noticeably never denied its authenticity. And suddenly, it wasn't just a legal fight anymore. It was a cultural reckoning. In Jasmine's Dallas office, phones buzzed nonstop. Donations spiked. Emails flooded in. Some pleaded for forgiveness, others demanded justice. "People want you to respond," Samira said. Jasmine glanced up briefly. "They already have it." Samira frowned. "What do you mean?" I didn't reply. That's the response. No post. No press conference. No statement. Just silence, deliberate, surgical. Absolute. And that silence echoed louder than any press soundbite could. Even those who once stayed neutral began to notice. A veteran political strategist tweeted, "This isn't passivity. It's precision. That's discipline. That's power." Meanwhile, in Karoline's camp, panic set in. Her team hadn't prepared for the message to leak. Her PR consultant urged her to issue a statement, something sincere to repair the optics. But Karoline resisted. "They think I'm weak," she snapped during a Zoom call. "I won't give them that." Her tone was sharp, but it cracked mid-sentence, and that crack traveled. Someone on the call leaked the audio to a journalist in Minneapolis. The next morning's headline read, "I'm not begging. I'm setting boundaries." But the public wasn't fooled. Everyone had already seen the message. It was begging, plain and simple. That night, Jasmine powered down her phone, reheated leftovers, and ate quietly by herself. She didn't scroll. She didn't check mentions. She knew how it would play out. The outrage, the spin, the endless chatter. Let them talk. While the internet dissected the meaning of her silence, Jasmine's composure remained unshaken. Karoline had spent months smirking on camera, mocking issues she didn't understand. But when accountability came knocking, she wanted the rules rewritten. Jasmine didn't. Days passed. 3. Then 4. No posts. No statements. No leaks by the 4th day. The Boston Globe ran an op-ed titled "The Woman Who Said Nothing and Changed Everything." It explored the philosophy of deliberate restraint, how silence, when controlled, becomes presence. And Jasmine's silence was everywhere. Students in Sacramento debated it in civics class. A morning show in Phoenix analyzed it as psychological resistance. A pastor in Birmingham devoted his Sunday sermon to it, calling it quiet courage. Jasmine hadn't asked for the attention. She kept to her schedule: Capitol Hill briefings, community meetings, small business visits. Yet something intangible had shifted. When she walked into rooms, people sat straighter. Conversations hushed. Even critics spoke with a newfound caution. Late one night, Brandon set a stack of headlines on her desk. "This," he said, "is what your silence did." Jasmine didn't glance up. "I didn't do it for headlines. That's why it worked," he replied. From the corner, Samira added, "They're calling you the blueprint. Quiet thunder. Still water. That kind of thing?" Jasmine raised an eyebrow, half amused. "All I did was not reply." "Exactly," Brandon said. "You never took the bait." Now she's unraveling, trying to explain herself. And unravel she did. Karoline's attempts to regain control only worsened the spiral. First, she claimed the message had been taken out of context. Hours later, she contradicted herself entirely, saying she never sent it at all. The inconsistency fueled the fire. A body language expert dissected her latest apology video frame by frame on national TV. "She's not in control," the expert said. "There's performance, but no conviction." Meanwhile, Jasmine's quiet grew louder. A group of veterans from Little Rock released an open letter supporting her approach. "We've served in places where dignity is currency. Congresswoman Crockett embodies that under pressure." In Cleveland, an artist painted a mural of Jasmine, eyes steady, expression composed, head slightly tilted as though she was about to speak, but chose not to. The mural went viral overnight. It wasn't just her silence. It was the weight behind it. People stopped talking over her and started listening. Even former allies of Karoline began changing tone. A political pundit who once praised Karoline's bluntness posted on Threads, "There's a difference between having an edge and causing damage." "Jasmine taught me that," Karoline retaliated. She went live for 10 minutes in a video titled "The Truth They Don't Want You to Hear." The thumbnail was confrontational, the tone defensive in the video. She framed herself as the victim, a woman punished for speaking truths others were afraid to say, but the comment section told a different story. "Easy to speak when you think no one will call you out. You had a microphone. She had history. You mocked her. She stayed silent. You blinked first." The silence, the very thing Karoline had mocked, was now dismantling her. No shouting, no exaggeration, no chaos to redirect, just her own words echoing against Jasmine's quiet in a private meeting. Karoline finally cracked. Sitting across from her lawyer, voice trembling, she confessed, "I thought if I apologized, she'd meet me halfway. She didn't even acknowledge me." Her lawyer was silent for a beat, then said, "You're not used to being ignored. That's the difference." Karoline turned away, eyes glistening, unable to reply. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Jasmine attended Sunday service at her neighborhood church. She slipped into a back pew, unobtrusive, blending into the congregation. After the service, an elderly man approached her, not for a photo, but to say quietly, "Thank you for not lowering yourself." Jasmine smiled softly. Some things don't deserve a reply. He nodded and walked away. But while Jasmine carried herself with steady grace, Karoline's world began to fracture in silence, and this time, it wasn't the internet coming for her. It was reality. The first blow arrived, not through headlines, but an email. A wellness brand in Scottsdale, one that had sponsored her podcast for nearly 2 years, sent a termination notice. No call, no warning, just a cold 4-line PDF. "We are no longer comfortable associating our brand with your platform." Effective immediately, her assistant printed it and placed it on the desk. Karoline stared at the words, flipped the page over, as if the action could erase what it said. It didn't. That same afternoon, her booking agent called to cancel her upcoming interview on a San Diego morning show. The producers cited a change in tone for the week's lineup. Karoline knew what that meant. Her once celebrated candor had turned toxic. The sharp quips and defiant smirks that once drew applause now looked brittle, desperate. Inside her condo in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, she paced the room, phone silent. Inbox empty. Group chats that once overflowed with chatter had gone dead. Even her fiancé had pulled away. At dinner, he stared at his plate, avoided her eyes, excused himself early for calls that didn't need making. "Why are you acting like I committed a crime?" she asked one night, her voice low, trembling. He sighed. "No cameras this time, Karoline, because you won't admit what you did." "I didn't do anything," she whispered. He looked at her for a long second, then stood and walked away. Karoline opened the refrigerator, staring into the cold light as though it might offer answers. It didn't. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Jasmine wrapped up a community meeting at a local school. She thanked the attendees, exchanged smiles, and prepared to leave when Brandon's phone buzzed an email. Subject line, for the record, it was from the producer of the political panel, the one where it all began. Inside was a single line of confirmation. Karoline's remarks were unscripted and intentionally off-topic. Attached were internal messages, showing she'd asked to go off script before the show. Brandon printed it immediately. This was no longer just a PR mess. It was potential legal leverage. Back on Capitol Hill, Jasmine sat through a committee hearing on housing discrimination. She asked only 2 questions, but later that night, a short clip of her listening. Arms crossed, focused, went viral again. The caption read, "When silence speaks louder than spin." Karoline, on the other hand, tried to post a short video for her private supporters. No makeup, no script, just her in a hoodie sitting on the edge of her bed. "I know people are upset," she began, "but I don't owe anyone a performance." It was meant to sound confident, but her voice trembled. She kept touching her hair, nervous. Within hours, that clip leaked beyond the paywall. Critics called it damage control dressed as defiance. Supporters said she looked vulnerable, but to most people, she looked cornered. And once that perception set in, that she was unraveling, not leading everything began to fall apart. Tuesday afternoon, Jasmine walked into Brandon's office with a paper bag from a local sandwich shop and set it down casually as if it were any normal day. The office was quiet. Too quiet for how close the trial date was. Outside, traffic hummed along Southard Street. Inside, everything felt suspended. Brandon looked up from his stack of notes. "You seem calm," Jasmine shrugged. "I've been through worse." She wasn't wrong. She'd survived smear campaigns, loaded donor questions, event pervades threats during her first run for office. But this was different. Not because it was louder, but because it was finally clear. Samira entered with her tablet. "The New York Times wants a quote." "No," Jasmine said, not even glancing up. "They're saying your silence is a campaign strategy now." "It's not a strategy," Jasmine said. "It's a boundary." Samira paused, then sat down. "Well, it's working," and it was. Jasmine wasn't appearing on camera, but she was very much on people's minds. Clips of her older speeches were resurfacing. Past interviews, the ones where she spoke about leadership, identity, and power, were circulating again. Without saying a single word, she had become the focus of the conversation. But behind the scenes, she was far from passive. "Let's go over the witness list," she told Brandon. "I want to know exactly who's testifying and how solid their statements are." Brandon nodded, sliding a page across the desk. "We've got the panel producer, 2 former interns, and a campaign aide from Karoline's 2022 run. All of them are ready." Jasmine glanced down the list. "Anyone seem uncertain?" "The assistant was at first," Brandon said. "But after hearing what Karoline said about you on that podcast last week, she called back. Said she's ready now." "Good," Jasmine replied, not with satisfaction, but with a calm sense of certainty. It was like fitting the final pieces of a puzzle into place. Samira checked her phone and read aloud. A former conservative donor just published an op-ed. "Says the party needs to think about what kind of behavior it rewards." Jasmine didn't react. They won't. Not until they lose something first. The room went quiet. Brandon leaned back. "You know what people are starting to say about you?" "What?" "That you're the one who never flinches." Jasmine gave a small smile. "I do flinch, just not in public." And she did. At night, when the call stopped and the email slowed, she'd sit alone in her living room. No staff, no scripts, no camera-ready expression, just her in the quiet. She'd scroll through her phone, not to post, but to delete comments. Deems messages that disguised cruelty as concern. "You're better than this. Let it go. Don't give it them what they want." She deleted them all because she knew what they really meant. Be quiet. Be nice. Be smaller. But she had already done that for years. Smiled through discomfort, stayed silent when it cost her, rephrased herself to keep others comfortable. And still, it was never enough. So this time, she didn't respond. She simply stayed firm where she was. Brandon noticed. "You're showing people what boundaries look like." "I'm showing them what not folding looks like," she corrected. He leaned forward. "Ever regret not responding to her message?" Jasmine looked at him. "It wasn't for me. It was for everyone watching." She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted relief. That line stayed with Brandon all day. He scribbled it into the margin of his legal pad and underlined it twice. Later that week, Jasmine visited a small community garden in Oak Cliff. A group of middle school girls waited for her, holding hand-painted signs and shy smiles. One of them, barely 12, handed her a folded note. Inside it read, "Thank you for not letting them talk to you like don't matter." Jasmine slipped the note into her coat pocket and knelt down beside her. "What's your name?" "I'm Amira." "You like to write?" The girl nodded, then keep writing. "Tell stories that speak the truth." Amira smiled. Jasmine stood, and from a few steps away, Samira watched quietly. No words needed. But as Jasmine's calm resolve became a symbol, Karoline was preparing one last move to twist the narrative. And by the end of that week, everything would shift again. Jasmine Crockett had become something no one, especially Karoline, had expected. A symbol not just of resistance, but of thoughtful, deliberate leadership in Santa Fe. A civics teacher paused her class to discuss public accountability. She projected Jasmine's quote on the board. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about relief. Then she asked her students, "What do we expect from those who cross the line?" In Portland, a local bookstore created a display titled "Speak Truth Without Yelling." The first book on the table, a biography of Shirley Chisholm. Right beside it, a printed transcript of Jasmine's inaugural congressional floor speech from 2 years ago. 2 years earlier. None of this was planned. But that's the thing about momentum. Sometimes you don't build it. It builds around you. Jasmine never changed her tone or her message. And that's why people trusted her. She didn't treat this as a breakthrough moment. She treated it as her job, because that's exactly what it was. Meanwhile, Karoline kept testing her limits. She'd stayed silent for a few days, then suddenly appeared on a fringa conservative talk show based in Boise. The setup was simple. A grainy camera, an oversized flag in the background. One host, one guest. No producers in sight. The host leaned in, smirking. A lot of people think you just said what others are afraid to say, especially about Jasmine Crockett. Some say the race narrative is getting old. Karoline laughed, genuinely laughed, then said, "Well, I won't say you're wrong." 10 seconds. That's all it took. The clip spread like wildfire by morning. Hush, hush. Well, she said, it was trending across 5 platforms. People were in shocked. They were exhausted. Tired of watching someone double down while claiming to be the victim. Tired of pretending sarcasm was honesty. Tired of pretending this was political when it had always been personal. Brandon watched the clip twice, then forwarded it to Jasmine's inbox without a single word. He didn't need to. Later that day, a call came from an editor at the Los Angeles Tribune. "We're pulling the opt. We plan to run from Karolina's team." The editor said, "We just can't stand behind it anymore." Brandon didn't celebrate. He simply thanked them and ended the call. Back in Dallas, Jasmine was seated at a round table with social workers. No one mentioned the lawsuit, just as she preferred. Afterward, an older woman approached her outside. Her braids stir with silver, her eyes wary. She didn't ask for a photo, just held out her phone showing the boys' clip. "She said this last night," the woman told her quietly. "And I thought about my daughter, about how she's watching this, about how I watched it happen to me and my mother before me." Jasmine glanced at the screen. "I know," she said, "but she's not our focus." "Then what is?" the woman asked, making sure we don't forget the cost. Jasmine got into her car and sat for a long minute before driving off. Her phone buzzed again, another reporter asking for a quote. She flipped it over, screen down, and kept driving. But the fallout was just beginning. Within 24 hours, the story would take another turn. 2 more brands cut ties with Karoline. One was a subscription-based skincare company. The other, a startup that had once featured her in a national ad campaign. Neither issued a statement. They simply removed her photos from their website and moved on. Even Western Ledger, the conservative publication that had supported her from start, quietly ended her weekly column. An insider told reporters she's become more of a liability than a voice. But Karoline wasn't finished. She started posting short-form videos on her own channel. Quick self-edited monologues filmed in her kitchen. In the third one, she declared, "They want mezzanines, but I'm not going anywhere." The comments were divided, but fewer than before. Engagement was fading. Sponsors stopped replying, and the fans who once repeated her words were disappearing from the threads. This wasn't just about losing work. It was about losing relevance. While Karoline struggled to stay visible, Jasmine was being watched more closely than ever. And someone unexpected was about to shift everything. It was a quiet Sunday morning in San Antonio when Brandon received a call that made him sit upright. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was steady and deliberate. "My name is Tasha Denton. I worked for Karoline during her last congressional campaign. I have something your team needs to see." Brandon didn't ask questions. Just gave her a secure inbox and told her to send it over. 10 minutes later, an envelope with attached PDFs, campaign prep sheets, color-coded notes, pre-drafted responses, and one section titled "Lines to Disrupt Progressive Women of Color." One line stood out. "If talks about race, accuse her of playing the victim. Pivot to personal responsibility. Don't let her control the tone." Brandon printed the document silently. Then he called Jasmine. "It's not just reckless anymore," he said. It was rehearsed. Jasmine didn't ask for evidence. She trusted him. "Keep building," she said. And he did. The legal team was already strong, but now its foundation was solid. What once looked like spontaneous debate moments were revealed as part of a calculated strategy, carefully scripted and disguised as off-the-cuff reactions. Later that evening, another email arrived from a producer who had worked with Karoline on a political talk show 2 years earlier. She offered to submit a sworn statement confirming that Karoline regularly practiced interrupting goppins of color during mock debates. "It keeps them emotional and off-script," she had said. The producer described her like someone testing boundaries just to prove she could. That was the missing link. Back at Jasmine's office, the air was still. Samira was reading a brief when Brandon entered, dropped the files in the desk and said, "We're not asking the court to guess anymore. We're going to show them." Samira skimmed the top page and exhaled. She planned every move, she said quietly. A pause. Then Jasmine looked up from her notes. "Then it's not about me," she said. "It's a Booth's playbook." That night, Jasmine sat in her kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she'd long forgotten to drink. She wasn't thinking about Karoline anymore. She was thinking about the next woman who'd faced the same treatment. The one expected to smile through disrespect disguised as debate. The one forced to write her tone just to be tolerated. This wasn't personal anymore. It was systemic. Meanwhile, Karoline was preparing another live segment. She still had a few platforms left, smaller shows, fringe channels where outrage still paid the bills. She went live just before midnight. Her hair was tied back, theft flag behind her, slightly uneven. Looking straight into the camera, she said, "You can cancel a person, but you can't cancel the truth." Then she gave Theesome's smirk she'd worn on the panel, but this time it didn't land. Within hours, the video was reposted beside the newly leaked campaign strategy notes. Her words aligned with the documents spelling them. By noon, the side-by-side clip had reached over 4 million views. The Guardian ran the headline. At best, this was never a slip. It was a script. Public opinion turned almost instantly. Even those who'd avoided taking sides now had no room to stay neutral. A college student from Tulsa tweeted, "This wasn't a conversation gone wrong. It was humiliation by design." In Sacramento, a group of high school seniors launched a podcast titled "How Power Protects Itself," using Karoline's leaked notes as their first case study. Jasmine didn't retweet or comment. Butsomione printed the transcript and left it on her desk. She read every line. Samira, watching her carefully, asked, "You want to say something now?" Jasmine shook her head. "Not yet." Brandon, standing near the doorway, smiled faintly. "She just handed us her defense, and she doesn't even realize it." Eventually, Karoline did realize it. 2 days later, she called a team meeting. Only 3 people showed up. A new assistant, her publicist intern, and one longtime staffer. She sat at the head of a long table that now felt too big for her shrinking circle. "They're turning everything against me," she said, glancing between the few faces left. No one answered. She lowered her voice. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it already had. And the next move wouldn't come from her. It would come from behind closed doors, carrying a number that would surprise everyone. By the time Karoline's name vanished from the lineup of a major conservative speaking tour in Kansas City, it was too late to spin. Organizers didn't issue a statement. They simply removed her image from the website and emailed attendees that the schedule had been updated. Reporters knew what that meant. So did Karoline. She called her last remaining media contact, someone she'd worked with back in 2020. "Can you help me get ahead off this?" she asked, trying to sound calm. There was a pause before the reply. "You'd have to say something true for that." Then the line went dead. Back in Dallas, Jasmine's legal team finalized the brief. 63 pages free of span or exaggeration. Just facts, documented behavior, emails, internal notes, and sworn statements from 4 former collaborators, all pointing to a deliberate pattern, thought-provoking, and targeted humiliation. Jasmine sat across from Brandon, reviewing the pages. Karoline Leavitt thought she could embarrass Jasmine Crockett on live TV and walk away untouched. What she hadn't expected was airtight evidence and a woman who used composure, not chaos, as her weapon. It was a Wednesday, an ordinary day. Emails were going out. Court prep was underway, and Jasmine was reviewing deposition notes with her attorney, Brandon Keyes, at his downtown Dallas office. Then Samira, her chief of staff, walked in holding her phone. Her expression wasn't alarmed, but it wasn't casual either. "I think you should see this," she said, handing over the phone. On the screen was a forwarded message, not a press release, not a legal file. Just a screenshot from a verified account. Karoline Leavitt had written directly to Jasmine. No lawyers, no filters. "I know this message might not reach you, but I have to try. I'm sorry I pushed too far. I thought I was being bold, but I was reckless. This has cost me more than I ever imagined. I'm asking you to stop the lawsuit, please." It wasn't dramatic or lengthy, but it struck deeper than anything Karoline had said in months. Brandon leaned over, scanning it carefully. "She's trying to shift the narrative," he said. "This isn't remorse, it's strategy." Jasmine didn't respond. She simply handed the phone back. "Don't leak it," she said. "Let someone else do that if they want to." 2 hours later, the message hit Twitter. An anonymous polytaltronist posted the screenshot. Within 20 minutes, it was trending, discussed on podcasts and late-night panels. That single 88-word message set the internet on fire. Some called it a human moment. "She's breaking," one user wrote. "Let her go." Others weren't convinced. You don't get to publicly attack someone, then beg privately. Cable networks followed. CNN aired a segment titled "The Power of Public Silence." MSNBC hosted a panel of former officials to analyze it. Fox News let the leak a privacy violation but didn't deny its authenticity. One thing was clear. This was no longer just a lawsuit. It had become a cultural moment. Back at Jasmine's office, Samira sat beside her as notifications poured in. Donations rose, inboxes filled, some asking for forgiveness, others demanding justice. "People want a response," Samira said quietly. Jasmine shook her head. "They already have it." "What do you mean?" "I didn't reply. No tweet, no press statement, just silence." And the silence spoke louder than any response ever could. Even circles that had stayed neutral began to react. A politicalstrategist from Philadelphia tweeted, "This isn't just restraint. It's discipline. It's power." Karoline's team, meanwhile, scrambled. They hadn't expected the leak. Her PR advisor urged her to issue a statement to sound more human, but Karoline refused. "They think I'm weak. I won't give them that satisfaction," she snapped during a Zoom. Her voice wavered slightly. Someone on that same call leaked the audio to a journalist in Minneapolis. The quote became a headline. "I'm not begging. I'm setting boundaries. But the Blick had seen the message. It was begging. That night, Jasmine powered off her phone. She didn't need to check the reactions. She already knew. She reheated leftovers, sat at her kitchen table, and let the silence carry her message.